Change your mind and achieve a total transformation in your life. Hey guys, tonight we drift into something rare, a moment where the noise finally fades, and you're left alone with that quiet voice in your head whispering, "You're meant for more." You're walking down a hallway lit by the soft glow of morning, and somewhere deep inside you feel it. This isn't just another day. It's a threshold. You stand on the edge of something, a change. Not a loud, dramatic kind, but a shift so powerful it might just tilt the entire axis of your life. Maybe you've felt it before, like your mind has been cluttered with stories that aren't yours. Doubts, distractions, old habits you didn't choose but carried for so long they feel like second skin. But tonight we start peeling that skin away. You probably won't survive this as the same person you were this morning. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And post your location and local time in the comments so I know exactly who's on this journey with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You didn't stumble onto this path by accident. Something brought you here, the sense that you've had enough of living on autopilot, that your thoughts, your actions, your reality need to align. But how do you change your mind, truly change it, without losing yourself? It starts with this. You've awakened. You're no longer sleepwalking through life, reacting out of habit, floating through the same old feelings of confusion or unfulfillment. The fog might still be thick, but now your eyes are open. And that's no small thing. Every transformation begins here, in awareness. And awareness isn't passive. It's the most active force you can summon. It watches your thoughts with curiosity. It questions the old scripts. It says maybe there's another way. The ancient Stoics knew this well. They weren't superhuman. Marcus Aurelius wasn't born wise. Seneca didn't float through hardship. Epictetus wasn't immune to suffering. They bled. They failed. They lost people they loved. But they understood one thing. The war was never out there. It was always within the mind. So Marcus wrote to himself again and again, not as emperor of Rome, but as a man trying to stay upright in a collapsing world. You have power over your mind, he wrote, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's not just Stoic philosophy. That's survival. That's day one instruction for the kind of life no one else can control but you. You wake up and the first thoughts are already waiting. Old anxieties disguised as truth, stories seeded long ago by other people's fears. But you don't have to believe them. Not anymore. Instead, you notice them like clouds passing overhead. You say, "That's not mine. That's just weather." This is where change begins. Not with resolutions or massive plans, but with single moments of awareness stacked on top of each other until they become identity. Historians still debate what really caused the collapse of the Roman Empire. Was it politics, economics, or something deeper, moral decay, a forgetting of the inner disciplines that held individuals together even when the world was falling apart? Whatever the cause, one thing's clear. Civilizations collapse when individuals forget how to govern themselves, and your mind in this analogy is an empire. You are both the ruler and the citizen. You shape the policies, you guard the gates, or you leave them open to every passing storm. Tonight you begin tightening those gates. You don't let just any thought come in and wreck your peace. You challenge the idea that you are your circumstances. You begin to look at the world not through fear but through the lens of what can I do now? There's a story of a samurai who, upon losing everything, calmly sharpened his sword under the moonlight. You act like it's over. he was told. No, he said. I'm just beginning again with a sharper mind. That's you now. When you look at your life, your career, your habits, your relationships, it's okay if you don't love what you see. That's not failure. That's data. It's okay if some things are still foggy. Awareness doesn't guarantee clarity, only the promise that clarity will come. And no, you won't become someone else overnight. That's not the goal. You're not changing into something. You're returning to who you were before the noise buried your fire, beneath the overthinking, beneath the fear, beneath the lies others told you about your worth. There's a voice still burning with truth. That voice is your compass now. But here's the hard truth. Change is boring. It's not always inspiring. It's not Instagrammable. Most of it is invisible. A thought not spoken, a judgment not followed, a breath taken instead of a reaction fired off. That's where the transformation lives. You don't need a new location, a new job, or a new partner to change your life. You need a new way of thinking about the old things. Because when your perspective shifts, everything changes. Even if nothing outside you does, like Marcus Aurelius journaling in a tent before battle, like a modern soldier taking a quiet moment in the desert to meditate, like you, lying there now, wondering if the life you crave is really possible. It is, but not through force, through mastery, inner discipline, awareness, consistency, forgiveness, and that's where we begin, because in the next section we go deeper. You'll learn what it truly means to stop trying to control the world and begin mastering your own mind, because no one's coming to do that part for you. But I promise if you stay with me, you'll never go back to who you were before tonight. You wake up and life already has plans for you. The notifications are lit like wildfire. The world demands your urgency, and someone somewhere is already trying to get your attention. But before you answer, before you let the whirlwind in, you pause. Not because everything is calm, but because you're learning to become calm within everything. And here's where the real shift begins. You must decide what's truly within your control. This isn't some fluffy morning affirmation. It's the foundation of inner power. Because for most of your life, you've been reacting to things that were never yours to control in the first place. Think about it. The traffic jam that stole your mood. The offhand comment that hijacked your peace. The news headline that spiraled into a 3-hour doom scroll. You've felt it. You've lived it. The illusion that somehow, if you just tried harder, you could make everything go your way. But that's not power. That's prison. The Stoics were clear. Epictetus, once a slave-turned philosopher, said, "Some things are up to us and some are not." That's it. Just two categories. No gray area. And the sooner you start sorting your life into those bins, the freer you become. You don't control the weather, but you control how you walk through the rain. You don't control other people's opinions, but you control how much you let them affect you. You don't control the economy, but you control what you consume, how you spend, and where you place your trust. Historians still debate whether Stoic principles originated purely from Greek schools or if their real potency emerged under the pressure of Roman political chaos. Either way, one thing's certain. Those who thrived were those who focused inward, not outward. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire plagued by war and plague, still found time each morning to center himself by writing in his journal. He called it preparation, a moment to ask, what might happen today that's outside of me, and how will I respond? That's not fantasy. That's strategy. And here's a tactic you can start using right now. Close your eyes tomorrow morning. Think about your day ahead. Ask yourself, what's likely to happen that I won't be able to change? A delay? A rude comment? A setback? Visualize it before it ambushes you. Then answer, how will I meet it? This is called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of misfortune. It's one of the most misunderstood but powerful Stoic practices. Because when you anticipate difficulty, not with dread but with readiness, you strip it of its sting. You reclaim your agency. Suddenly you're not reacting, you're responding. That subtle difference is the whole game. Take, for example, Nelson Mandela. Decades in prison could have embittered any man, but he didn't waste time raging at what he couldn't change. Instead, he turned inward. He educated himself. He trained his mind. He emerged not just as a freed prisoner, but as a freer man. He focused on what was still within his domain, his attitude, his perspective, his integrity. That's what you're doing now. You're breaking the addiction to control. You're quitting the mental habit of believing that everything should go your way. Because once you release that burden, something wild happens. You feel lighter. You stop trying to bend the wind and start adjusting your sails. There's a moment, a quiet shift, when you see a delay not as a frustration, but as a chance to practice patience. When someone cuts you off in traffic, and instead of exploding, you whisper, "Not mine to fix." When a plan falls apart and instead of spiraling, you say, "Good, let's adapt." That is Stoicism in motion, not stiff, not emotionless, but grounded, strategic, wise. And it's not just about surviving a bad moment. It's about mastering the entire day. Because when you anchor yourself to what you can control, you're no longer a puppet of your circumstances. You become the director. You choose the lens. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now." That line should be burned into your memory. Read it when your emotions surge. Whisper it when you feel powerless. Remember it when the storm hits. Here's something even more practical. Write 2 columns each morning. On the left, list everything worrying you. On the right, split that. List into 2, what you can change and what you can't. Then cross out the second column and focus only on the first. That act, simple, quiet, unglamorous, is the act of transformation. That is you choosing to change your mind before the world changes it for you. Even Seneca, who had immense wealth and influence, trained himself to lose it all. He'd fast, sleep on the floor, wear ragged clothes, not because he wanted to suffer, but because he didn't want to be owned by comfort. That's the kind of mindset you're building. Not fragile, not dependent on everything going just right, but flexible, solid, calm beneath chaos. There's an old story of a fisherman whose boat broke mid-journey. Instead of panicking, he sat quietly and said, "The sea is not mine, only the oar in my hand." Let that be you. So tomorrow when the world throws its curveballs, and it will, you'll breathe. You'll ground yourself in this. I cannot control this, but I can control how I carry it. And that's the superpower nobody can take from you. The storm won't stop, but you'll stop being tossed by it. The alarm buzzes. Your eyes flicker open. For a few seconds there's silence, pure, unfiltered existence. But then it begins. Notifications light up. Your hand reaches for the phone. Your brain spins through a checklist of worries, tasks, and half-finished thoughts. And just like that, before you've even gotten out of bed, the day has taken you hostage. That's what happens when you don't start with intention. The Stoics weren't interested in busy lives. They were interested in deliberate lives. They believed every day was a training ground for your character, and how you began your morning wasn't just a personal ritual, it was a declaration to the world. I'm not here to drift. I'm here to live on purpose. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you don't have a consistent goal in life, you can't live it in a consistent way." And here's what he meant. Without a daily purpose, you don't live. You react. You become a pinball bouncing off other people's priorities, scrolling endlessly, pulled into drama that was never yours to begin with. But when you start your day with purpose, you steer your own ship. It doesn't have to be a dramatic or heroic mission. In fact, the simpler the purpose, the more powerful it becomes. Ask yourself this each morning. What's one thing I can do today that will make this day meaningful? That's your anchor. It might be finishing a single task you've been avoiding, or showing up fully for a conversation with someone you care about, or walking into your job, not just to make money but to sharpen your craft. Whatever it is, name it. Write it down. Speak it aloud. Do not let the day start without that anchor. You might be thinking, but I don't know my long-term purpose. That's okay. That's not what this is about. The Stoics weren't chasing some mystical life purpose carved into stone. They were showing up to each day and asking, how can I move 1 inch closer to the person I claim I want to be? There's a scene from the life of Stephen Hawking that cuts straight to this idea. Diagnosed with ALS at 21, told he had only a few years to live, he could have collapsed under the weight of despair. But instead, he asked himself a different question. If I still have time, what's the most meaningful thing I can do with it? His answer: think, explore, push the boundaries of human knowledge. And he did. Even as his body broke down, his purpose sharpened. He wrote A Brief History of Time, inspired millions, and expanded the universe, not physically but mentally. That's the power of purpose. It doesn't change your circumstances. It changes how you move through them. Stoic thinkers believed that when you move through your day without purpose, you become vulnerable to anything and everything. You're more likely to be consumed by minor frustrations, to react emotionally, to chase dopamine hits from meaningless distractions. But purpose acts like armor. It keeps you centered. Seneca once observed, when a person does not know to what port they are sailing, no wind is favorable. And isn't that what so many days feel like? Aimless, blown around by the latest message, the latest crisis, the latest scroll? But not you, not anymore. Because starting today, you stop letting the world decide what your day means. You decide. Here's a practice. Each morning before anything else, write one line, just one. Today will matter if I... and complete the sentence. That's it. That's your lighthouse. And when distractions come, and they will, you look back at that sentence and ask, is what I'm doing right now getting me closer to that? This is how change happens. Not in a single grand act, but in thousands of small, aligned moments. Historians sometimes debate whether the daily writings of Marcus Aurelius were more therapy than philosophy. Was he trying to sound wise for posterity, or was he just trying to stay sane? Either way, his discipline is clear. Every day, he repeated the same truth in different words. You are here to live with reason, not be dragged around by impulse. That's why setting a daily purpose is more than productivity. It's personal revolution. Because what robs you of energy isn't just tasks, it's drifting. When you feel scattered, pulled in 20 directions, doing everything but feeling like you've achieved nothing, it's not because you're lazy. It's because you're not anchored. There's a quiet power in knowing what you came to do. even if it's just one thing. A Stoic life is a sculpted life, and every day, you chip away the distractions to reveal the shape underneath. So tomorrow morning, don't start with email, don't start with the news, don't even start with your to-do list. Start with one clear question: why does today matter? Even if the answer is simple, because I want to live it fully. That's enough. And if you forget midway through the day, don't worry. Come back to your purpose like a compass. Let it guide you home. Because once you've mastered the morning, the rest of the day follows your lead. And once purpose is your guide, you'll begin to make choices you didn't think you had the power to make. Like the one we'll talk about next. Facing discomfort on purpose. You stand before the cold water. Your hand hesitates at the faucet. Part of you screams for comfort. Hot steam, soft towels, the usual routine. But another part of you, the part that's growing stronger each day, whispers, "Do it anyway." And so you do. You step into the cold, not because you want to suffer, but because you finally understand this. Intentional discomfort is the training ground of your transformation. Your mind is wired to protect you. That's its job. It will avoid pain, skip the difficult task, distract you with small pleasures instead of the hard truth. It will say, just 5 more minutes. You can skip it today. You deserve a break. But the Stoics had a different philosophy. They didn't believe in waiting for life to challenge you. They believed in challenging yourself first, on your own terms, in your own way. Because if you can endure discomfort by choice, then when life throws it at you without permission, you won't collapse. Seneca called it voluntary hardship. He advised the wealthy and powerful to live for a few days each month as if they were poor. Eat the simplest food, wear rough clothes, sleep on the floor, not to punish themselves but to ask a piercing question. Is this the condition I feared? That one question changes everything. Because it reveals a truth that comfort hides. Most of our fears aren't based on reality. They're based on imagination. Historians still debate whether Seneca practiced what he preached. After all, he died a wealthy man. But his writings endure for a reason. Because even if his hardship was part theoretical, his insight remains practical. Discomfort doesn't destroy you. It defines you. Think of Viktor Frankl, a man stripped of everything in the Holocaust, family, freedom, dignity. And yet what remained was the unshakable truth he discovered. You may not control your circumstances, but you always control your response to them. He didn't run from discomfort, he used it as fuel. His book, Man's Search for Meaning, didn't come from a place of comfort. It came from the ashes of agony, and still it became a guiding light for millions. The Stoics would have called that fortitude, the ability to remain composed, even serene, in the face of suffering. And you can train it every day, not by putting yourself through misery for its own sake, but by choosing small moments of challenge that sharpen your mind like a blade. Take a cold shower, fast for half a day, walk instead of drive. Have that difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Every time you do, you're telling your mind, we don't run from discomfort. We walk through it with intention. And in a world addicted to convenience, this makes you dangerous in the best way, because you're no longer waiting to feel ready. You're becoming someone who acts despite discomfort, despite fear, despite resistance. It's like lifting weights, but for your willpower. At first it's awkward. Your mind complains, your body tenses. But the more you practice, the stronger your discipline becomes. And eventually your comfort zone doesn't disappear, it expands, Epictetus said. Difficulties show a person's character. So when trouble comes, think of yourself as a wrestler whom God has matched with a tough young opponent. For what purpose? To turn you into Olympic-class material. Let that line ring in your ears next time your mind says, it's too hard. And here's the truth you must absorb. Comfort is addictive. It feels good until it rots you from the inside. It makes you fragile, impatient, easily rattled. It whispers the lie that you can't do hard things, so you stop trying. But discomfort? Discomfort makes you dangerous. Because when life punches, you're already conditioned to absorb the blow and keep walking. There's a modern term for this now: stress inoculation. Psychologists use it to describe how exposing yourself to manageable stress builds resilience. It's not new. The Stoics just had a cooler name for it: inner freedom. So tomorrow morning, find a way to train discomfort. Not to suffer, but to grow. Wear the less comfortable shoes. Speak up in the meeting. Leave your phone in another room for 2 hours. Take the stairs. Small things, but they add up. You'll notice a shift. Less hesitation, more clarity. You'll start finishing tasks you used to avoid. You'll stop negotiating with your excuses. You'll walk into challenges not with dread, but with calm preparation. Because what is courage, really? It's not the absence of fear. It's the habit of walking forward anyway. And it starts with these small chosen discomforts. A quiet fast. A cold room. An awkward truth spoken clearly. That's how you prepare for the storms ahead. By practicing in the drizzle today. And eventually, when life does hit hard, and it will, you'll recognize the pain. Not as punishment, but as familiar terrain. And you'll think, I've trained for this. The Stoics didn't seek pain, but they didn't flinch from it either, and neither will you. Next time fear knocks on your door, you won't hide. You'll open it, look it in the eye, and say, I've already been through worse by choice, and from there, you'll be ready for anything. There's a heaviness that arrives before anything even happens. You're sitting quietly, and suddenly your chest tightens, your stomach sinks, your mind races ahead, trying to predict every possible disaster, the meeting that might go wrong, the person who might leave, the dream that might fail. You haven't even started your day, but your nervous system is already fighting battles that haven't occurred. That's the madness of anxiety. But the Stoics had a weapon for this, and it wasn't denial. It wasn't blind optimism. It was one of the most misunderstood but powerful mental tools in their entire arsenal. Premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It sounds grim, maybe even a little dark. But it's actually the opposite of despair. It's about liberation. You sit down, you close your eyes, and you imagine the worst, not to torture yourself, but to prepare. Because when you visualize what could go wrong, clearly, calmly, deliberately, you stop being hostage to vague fear. You disarm the unknown. You stare the worst-case scenario in the face and say, if this happens, I will still be okay. Seneca put it simply, he robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand. And history backs him up. Athletes train for rain on game day. Pilots train for engine failure. Soldiers rehearse the ambush. Not because they want those things to happen, but because readiness replaces fear. When you don't prepare, fear owns you. But when you do, fear becomes a partner in your planning. There's a moment from my own life when this practice saved me. I was preparing to quit a job that had defined me for years. A stable career, good income, prestige. But it no longer aligned with the life I wanted to live, and the fear was brutal. What if I fail? What if I can't support myself? What if I lose everything? So I did the one thing my fear didn't expect. I wrote it all down. I imagined every worst-case scenario. Losing income. I'd cut my expenses. Feeling lost. I'd create a new routine. Judgment from others. I'd talk it out, face the sting, move on. And something strange happened. The fear didn't vanish, but it shrank. It became manageable. Because now it had a shape, and anything with a shape can be prepared for. You see, your mind hates vagueness. It fills in the blanks with horror. But once you bring the nightmare into the light, you stop being haunted by shadows. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And this practice is one of the most radical ways to claim that power. Historians debate whether Roman emperors like Marcus actually practiced this ritual daily, or if it was more philosophical theory. But his private writings, meditations, are full of rehearsals for pain, loss, betrayal, death. He didn't do it to make himself sad. He did it to make himself unbreakable. So here's how you can start. Take a sheet of paper. Write, "What am I afraid might happen today?" List the fears. Be honest. Be graphic. Then write next to each, "If this happens, here's how I will respond." Not react. Respond. Do this every morning for 1 week. Watch how your mental state transforms. Suddenly, the traffic jam isn't a crisis, it's expected. The cold reply from someone you love doesn't crush you, it was a possibility, and you're grounded. The job interview that went sideways doesn't destroy your confidence. You already practiced this exact moment in your mind. This isn't pessimism. It's mental jujitsu. You're using fear as a training partner, not an enemy. Think of the Stoic warrior. He sharpens his sword, not because he's obsessed with violence, but because he respects the inevitability of chaos. And in modern life, chaos looks like bills, breakups, layoffs, rejection, illness. No one escapes it, but not everyone trains for it. And when you train, the chaos doesn't feel like the end. It feels like terrain you've already walked in your mind. Even the ancient Stoics practiced imagining death, not because they were morbid, but because they believed that only when you've faced the absolute worst can you live with absolute freedom. Because what's left to fear when you've already rehearsed your greatest loss? What's left to dread when you've stripped the unknown of its mystery? Take it from the story of Admiral James Stockdale, a U.S. Navy officer held captive in a Vietnamese POW camp for over 7 years. Tortured, isolated, starved. How did he survive? He credited stoicism. He said, "I never lost faith in the end of the story. I also confronted the most brutal facts of my current reality, whatever they might be." That balance, hope with realism, is the Stoic way, and it can be your way too. So the next time you feel that tightness in your chest, that weight of anxiety pressing against your thoughts, remember, this isn't something to run from. This is something to rehearse. Not because you're doomed, but because when the day throws its punches, you won't flinch. You'll already be standing. And maybe, just maybe, you'll smile. Because you saw it coming, and you were ready. There's something you've been avoiding. Not a task, not a conversation. Something deeper. A truth. You know it's there, just beneath the surface. an unspoken awareness that time is slipping by, quietly, relentlessly. And unlike everything else, this one can't be negotiated with, reasoned with, or ignored forever. It's the truth of your mortality, and the Stoics didn't flinch from it. In fact, they made it a daily practice. Memento mori, remember you will die, not to depress you, but to wake you. Because strangely, when you face death, you begin to live. You become present, not out of panic, but out of reverence. Suddenly the little things, the sun on your face, the texture of a conversation, the stillness in a deep breath, they mean everything. Because you realize this might be the last time you feel them. Marcus Aurelius, in the heart of power in the middle of war, wrote to himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. It's not a threat. It's a compass." A Stoic doesn't wait until tragedy strikes to appreciate life. A Stoic practices loss in advance, not to be cold, but to be clear. Clear about what matters. Clear about what's worth your energy. Clear about what deserves your presence. Historians still argue whether Roman thinkers like Marcus were morbid or merely reflective. But one thing's certain, their obsession with mortality wasn't about fear, it was about focus. Because when death is a possibility, not someday, but today, you stop postponing the things that matter. You stop wasting time on petty arguments. You stop scrolling like you have forever. You call the person you love. You speak the truth you've been sitting on. You get up and do the thing you've been waiting for the right time to do. There's a story about a young monk who asked his teacher how to find peace. The teacher handed him a skull and said, "Carry this with you for a week. Sleep beside it. Eat next to it. Speak to it." At first the monk was horrified, but by the end of the week he noticed something. His speech had become softer, his thoughts clearer, his joy more profound. Because he wasn't pretending anymore. He was living as if every moment counted, and that's the truth you need to internalize. Every moment does. You don't need a skull to remember. You just need a question. If today were my last, am I living in a way I'd be proud of? Not in a big, sweeping sense, but right now, am I being kind? Am I honest in what I'm doing? Am I spending this hour wisely, or just letting it pass? I have a friend whose father died in a sudden accident, no warning. One day he was there, the next gone. For months afterward, my friend wrote a single line in a journal every morning. "If today were my last, I would..." He told me those 10 words changed everything. He ended a toxic relationship, started learning photography, something he'd put off for years. He began to say "I love you" without waiting for the perfect moment. Not because he was trying to be poetic, but because he understood. Time is the most brutal currency. You can't earn more of it. You can't save it. You can only spend it. And how you spend it, that's your life. And this is where Stoicism becomes emotional, not because it's sad, but because it's real. You're not immortal. You won't always be young. The people you love won't always be here. One day, someone will say your name for the last time. So how will you live before that moment comes? That's not a question to answer once. That's a question to keep beside you, every single morning. You can practice memento mori in tiny ways. Pause before rushing through a meal. Look at the person you're speaking with. Really look. Appreciate that you woke up, that you have another shot at showing up fully. The Stoics weren't in love with death, they were in love with life. And death, they believed, was the thing that gave life its urgency. Seneca said, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books every day. You don't have to be dramatic about it. You don't need to announce it on social media or write it on your mirror. You just need to live like your time is precious. Because it is. No one's guaranteed tomorrow. But everyone has today. And you, right now, lying here, listening, reflecting, you are alive. You are breathing. You are in this moment. And that means you still have time. Time to forgive. Time to act. Time to realign. You've made it halfway through this journey, and that alone says something rare about you. You're not just surviving. You're trying to wake up. To reclaim your days. To live deliberately. The next practice will meet you there. Because in a world of instant reactions and impulsive responses, there's a forgotten superpower that changes everything. The pause. And you'll soon discover why silence, not reaction, might just be the greatest strength you've never trained. You've been there before. Someone says the wrong thing. A message pings your phone at the wrong time. A headline lights your fuse. And before your breath catches up to your brain, it's already happened. You've reacted. A sharp reply. A slammed door. A spiral of thoughts that feel impossible to stop. And just like that, one moment of emotion hijacks an entire day. But what if you didn't? What if, in that 1 second of rising heat, you didn't fire back, but instead paused? Welcome to one of the most underrated superpowers of Stoicism, the deliberate pause. See, Stoics don't suppress emotion, they just don't serve it. They believe in letting feelings rise without letting them rule. Because in that razor-thin space between stimulus and response, you get to decide who you are. Epictetus put it plainly, it's not what happens to you but how you react to it that matters. And that truth could save relationships, careers, and even lives. Do you remember the 2022 Oscars? That slap? Of course you do. 1 second, one impulsive emotional choice. And in that blink, years of reputation shifted. It's not judgment, it's a reminder. Because what happened there happens to all of us. We react out of ego, out of fear, out of pride, and then we regret. But Stoicism offers a different path, not silence, but self-command. The Stoics trained themselves like emotional athletes. They understood the mind's knee-jerk instinct to protect itself. They knew anger would often rise faster than thought. So they practiced the pause, not with big rituals, with small acts, breath, stillness, writing, walking, anything that created space between impulse and action. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of an empire, often dealt with betrayal, war, and personal loss. And yet in his meditations we find page after page of this one idea: wait before speaking, wait before acting, let the wave pass, then choose. Historians often wonder, were these his diary entries? Or his shields? Probably both. Because Marcus didn't want to win arguments. He wanted to win his own mind. And now you understand why this isn't just self-help advice. It's survival strategy for a chaotic world. You felt it too. The email you wish you didn't send. The thing you said you didn't mean. The post you wish you hadn't written. That need to respond instantly. It's like scratching an itch that only grows worse the more you touch it. But what if you waited? What if next time, instead of replying, you just breathed? Try this. When you feel triggered, stop. Inhale slowly. Count to 3. Then ask, what would my best self do right now? You don't have to decide everything in that moment. You just have to not react. Because the act of pausing doesn't make you weak. It makes you sovereign. You regain the power that the world constantly tries to steal. The power to choose. to respond, not to explode, to direct your life instead of being dragged by it. The ancient Stoics weren't monks on a mountaintop. They were generals, emperors, slaves. Their lives were full of chaos, and yet they believed this: the most powerful person is not the one who conquers others, but the one who conquers themselves. There's a story of a samurai who trained in silence for 3 years, not to avoid conflict, but to master his inner sword. When insulted in public, he bowed. When provoked, he smiled. Not because he was passive, but because he knew his real opponent wasn't out there. It was the fire within, and that's you now. Practicing pause, not to be indifferent, but to be intentional. So here's a challenge. Pick one situation each day to practice it. Someone cuts you off in traffic? Smile and wave. Someone sends a snarky text? Don't reply yet. You feel misunderstood in a meeting? Write your thoughts, not your rebuttal. Let the moment breathe. Because when you delay reaction, you give wisdom a chance to enter. You stop being reactive. You start becoming reflective. And this small act of mastery echoes into everything. How you lead, how you love, how you face the chaos of your life. Even neuroscientists today echo this Stoic wisdom. Name it to tame it. When emotion rises, label it: I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm afraid. That naming slows the storm. It activates reason. And from there, you reclaim your next move. But you have to train for it. Because in a world of hot takes and instant replies, the one who pauses is the one who stands apart. So tomorrow, when the spark ignites inside you, pause, say nothing, do nothing, just feel the heat, and don't let it burn you. That's the beginning of your transformation. Not dramatic, not visible to others, but real. Because when you can sit still with discomfort without lashing out, you've already won. And that calm, that poise, it's not the end goal. It's the gateway to something deeper, acting from principle, not praise. Which leads us to the next Stoic key: living without the need for validation. And once you unlock that, no one else will ever control your peace again. There's a strange silence after you do something good and no one notices. You hit send on the message that cost you courage. You finish the project, you resist the temptation. You do the right thing and nothing. No applause. No pat on the back. Just the quiet echo of your own decision. And in that silence, a little voice creeps in. Did it even matter? That voice, the craving for validation, is one of the deepest addictions of the human mind. And the Stoics saw it for what it truly is: a trap. Seneca warned, "Do not seek for admiration. It is always fleeting." And that fleeting feeling is exactly what makes it so dangerous. Because once you taste it, you want more. A like becomes your worth. A compliment becomes your compass. You begin to live for others' eyes, not your own. And here's the danger. The more you chase approval, the further you drift from yourself. Your actions no longer reflect your values. They reflect what you think others want from you. You become a mirror, not a person. Polished, pleasing, hollow, but not anymore. Because starting today, you begin to live from a different source. Not from applause, but from principle. See, Stoicism doesn't reject community. It doesn't say, never care what anyone thinks. That's not strength. That's delusion. What it does say is this: base your identity on what is within your control, not the shifting winds of public opinion, because the crowd is fickle. One day they lift you up, the next they turn away. If your self-worth depends on them, then you are never free. You're enslaved to the rise and fall of other people's moods, and that's no way to live. Think of Marcus Aurelius. He ruled over millions, had armies at his command, and still he wrote to himself, "Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions." Historians still debate whether his humility was genuine or constructed. But Meditations was never meant for anyone else's eyes, which means he wasn't performing, he was practicing. And now so are you. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Am I posting that photo for expression or for attention? Am I saying yes because I believe in it, or because I'm afraid of being disliked? Am I helping that person because it's right, or because I want to be seen as kind? These aren't easy questions, but they're necessary ones. Because a Stoic life is not just about how you live, it's about why. And when your why is clear, you no longer need applause. You become your own witness. You act not because you'll be praised, but because not acting would betray who you are. That's freedom. There's a moment from the life of Frederick Douglass that captures this perfectly. After escaping slavery, he could have stayed silent, safe. But instead he spoke, loudly, fiercely, risked everything, and often the crowd hated him for it. But he didn't stop, because Douglass wasn't chasing admiration. He was chasing truth. He didn't need the crowd to validate him. He needed to live in alignment with his values. That's Stoicism in motion. Now pause for a moment. Think about your own day. How many of your decisions today were shaped, subtly or directly, by the need to be seen? How often did you seek validation before you sought truth? It's okay. That pull is natural. But now you're choosing something higher, integrity over impression. Here's a way to practice it. At the end of your day, ask yourself, what did I do today that no one noticed, but still mattered? Celebrate that. That's the real you, not the curated version, not the crowd pleaser, the quiet self who lives by a compass no one else can see. That's the version of you that builds resilience. That stays calm when misunderstood. That keeps going when applause fades. Because external validation is like sugar. Quick high, empty afterward. But internal validation, that's like solid nourishment. It builds strength that lasts. Seneca taught that if your peace depends on others, then you've handed over your soul. But if it depends on your character, you can stand firm in any storm. So next time you do something good and no one says anything, smile. You've just passed one of life's hardest tests, doing the right thing without needing a witness. And in that silence, something begins to bloom, self-respect. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't need their approval. You only need to look in the mirror and say, today, I lived like me. And now, from that foundation, you can start listening to the only voice that matters, your own. Which brings us to the next Stoic tool. It's not fancy. It's not complicated, but it's one of the most powerful practices ever used by emperors, rebels, and seekers alike. Journaling. And once you try it the Stoic way, you'll never look at a blank page the same way again. A blank page. That's all it is. A little space, a little time, but in the hands of a Stoic it becomes something more. A compass. A battlefield. A confessional. A mirror. You sit down, pen in hand, or fingers on keys, and for a few quiet moments, you stop performing. You stop reacting, you stop hiding, you just write. Welcome to the Stoic Journal. Not the flowery diary of childhood, not the productivity planner of hustle culture, but something older, deeper, a ritual that helped shape emperors and outlast empires. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Meditations not for his followers, not for history, but for himself." In the middle of a war, sickness, grief, and temptation, he returned to the page. Every day, sometimes repeating the same truth over and over. Why? Because he wasn't trying to be clever. He was trying to stay sane. Historians still debate whether Marcus truly practiced what he preached, or if his words were aspirational. But maybe that's the point. Maybe journaling isn't about who you already are, but about who you're still trying to become, and that's where you come in. Because if your mind feels chaotic, scattered, heavy, you don't need more noise. You need a place to empty the chaos and name the weight. That place is the page. The Stoics knew that your mind, left unchecked, becomes a storm. But writing is how you create shelter. You don't stop the wind. You just stop being swept away by it. Think about your average day. Thoughts rush through like a stampede. Fears, desires, comparisons, regrets. You try to hold them in your head, but they tangle. You feel overwhelmed, not because life is too big, but because your thoughts are unorganized. So you write them down, and suddenly, they lose their grip. You realize the fear was just a feeling. The frustration was just a sentence. The self-judgment was just noise. Writing isn't therapy. It's preparation. Like sharpening your sword before battle, journaling is how you meet the day with clarity. It's how you ask, what am I avoiding? Why did that moment upset me? Is this desire mine or someone else's? These aren't easy questions, but that's why they work. And the beauty is, you don't need the perfect notebook. You don't need a fancy system. All you need is honesty. Brutal, kind, clear honesty. You can write, I'm afraid. I felt jealous today. I didn't act like myself and I don't know why. That's not weakness. That's awareness. And awareness, practiced consistently, becomes transformation. In a world obsessed with speed, Stoic journaling invites slowness. It says, pause, reflect, come home to your own mind. Epictetus advised his students to ask themselves each evening, what bad habit did I curb today? What temptation did I resist? In what respect am I better? That's not perfectionism, that's self-leadership. Here's how you can begin. Every morning or evening, write 3 things. What did I do well today? Where did I falter? What will I aim for tomorrow? That's it. No fluff, no filters, just the raw data of a growing soul. Over time, this daily reflection becomes your roadmap. You'll start to notice patterns, how you shrink under pressure, how you overreact to certain people, how your energy soars when you act in alignment with your values. You'll catch yourself sooner, apologize faster, speak up more clearly, let go more easily, and eventually, you'll begin to trust yourself because you've watched your own evolution unfold in ink. There's something sacred about seeing your thoughts on paper. You can't lie to yourself for long, not when it's staring back at you. And that confrontation, it's the beginning of real freedom. Even the great figures of modern history leaned on this practice. Leaders, inventors, activists. Quietly, behind the scenes, they journaled. They wrote their doubts, their plans, their heartbreaks, not for the world, but for their own alignment. Because if you can face yourself on the page, you can face anything outside it. There's a peace that comes when your mind is no longer a swirling fog, but a clear reflection of what you've chosen to be. And that clarity, it allows you to start your days not in chaos, but in gratitude. Not the fake kind, not the social media kind, but the Stoic kind. The kind that grounds you before the world tries to shake you. The kind that begins not with what's missing, but with what's already here. And that's exactly where we're going next, because when you learn to start your mornings with thankfulness, not complaints, your entire life begins to soften and shift. So grab your journal, bring your truth, and prepare to meet the day with a different kind of strength. You open your eyes, maybe the alarm buzzes, maybe the light slants through the window just right, maybe it's your own mind that wakes you before anything else does. And before you've even taken your first full breath, the thoughts begin. I'm so tired. It's already morning? Ugh, today's going to be a lot. Most people don't notice this moment. It slips past, invisible but powerful. Your first thought steering the entire day like the first push on a bicycle. And that's why this final practice might be the most deceptively powerful of them all. Don't complain in the first hour after waking. Simple, right? But try it tomorrow. Really try it. You'll see just how conditioned your mind is to greet the world with negativity, as if complaint is a ritual, a reflex, an identity. But here's what the Stoics knew. How you begin shapes how you live, Epictetus reminded his students. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. That alarm? Neutral? The rain? Just weather? The meeting ahead? Just time passing? It's not the thing, it's what you say to yourself about the thing. And that's where the spiral starts. A quiet grumble becomes a bad mood. A sigh becomes tension. And soon, you've set the tone for your whole day, and you didn't even choose it. You let it happen. But now, you know better. Now, you reclaim that hour. Not to fake positivity, not to pretend life is perfect, but to build resilience before the world demands it. It's what the Stoics did. They didn't greet the day with whining. They greeted it with clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being." That line, that's armor, because life is heavy. The moment your eyes open, the weight of responsibilities, expectations, disappointments, it's all right there waiting for you. But you don't have to pick it all up at once. You can pause, breathe, and choose your lens. Here's how to begin. When you wake up tomorrow, say nothing negative for 60 minutes. No sighs about the alarm. No grumbling about the weather. No rolling your eyes at yourself in the mirror. Instead, redirect. Don't love the rain. Try. I get to walk through something real today. Tired from a late night. Try. I'm alive and I've made it to another morning. Dreading work? Try. Today is a test and I've trained for it. Sound cheesy? Sure. But it's not about being poetic, it's about interrupting the script. Because the script you wake up with, it's old, worn, default. And if you don't edit it, it will keep writing your life for you. One complaint at a time. But when you don't let that first complaint out, when you hold it, when you redirect it, you're not suppressing yourself. You're retraining yourself. This is willpower, in action, not dramatic, not loud, but quiet, repetitive, game-changing. Modern psychology now supports what the Stoics always knew. Negativity has momentum. Start the day with it, and it compounds. But if you break the pattern early, your whole nervous system shifts. You become steadier, calmer, more grateful. And what's beautiful is that this practice doesn't require time, money, or talent, just intention. You're already going to live the first hour of the day. Why not choose the version that builds you? Why not speak to yourself as if your thoughts mattered? Because they do. They shape your mood, your actions, your energy, your relationships. and maybe, in time, your entire fate. That's why the Stoics weren't just philosophers, they were strategists of the self. They didn't wait for the world to change. They changed the way they met the world, one morning at a time. And now, so do you. So here's your challenge. 1 hour, no complaints. Even if you wake up late, even if you stub your toe, even if the world throws a test at you before you've had your coffee, no complaining. Not because you're numb, but because you're powerful. Because if you can choose your first thoughts, then you can choose your whole day. And if you can choose your day, you can choose your life. You've made it. 10 Stoic practices. 10 ways to completely change the way you think, feel, and act. Not theories. Not quotes. Tools. From premeditating misfortune to facing death, to training discomfort, to journaling the truth. You've built something rare tonight. Inner armor. Because transformation isn't about becoming someone else. It's about returning to who you really are. Beneath the noise, the fear, the need for approval. You. Now, as we wrap up, let's soften the edges. Let's slow things down. Let's enter the final part of our journey tonight. You're lying there now, perhaps with your thoughts quietly circling, still reflecting, still absorbing. Let them drift. Let them soften. You don't need to hold on tightly anymore. You've done enough for tonight. Feel the air on your skin, the weight of the blanket, the gentle stillness that only night brings. You've walked through 10 gates of the mind, each one asking a little more honesty, a little more courage. You've trained discipline. You've practiced silence. You've looked at your fears, not with panic, but with preparation. That alone puts you among the rare few. The world will keep rushing. It always does. But now you have something the noise can't touch. Clarity. You understand that discomfort is not an enemy. That death is not a terror. That peace is not found in approval, but in intention, in alignment. And best of all, you now know this. Nothing external has to change for everything internal to transform. As you drift into sleep, picture your mind like a calm lake. No ripples, no storms. Just a smooth surface holding the reflection of who you're becoming. You're not lost, you're not late. You're right on time, right here, where change begins. So let go now. Let your muscles soften. Let your breath slow. There's nothing else to do. There's nowhere else to be. You've already started. And that is enough. Sleep well, traveler of the mind. Sweet dreams.